The graveyard was never meant for the living, yet something stirred among the forgotten stones. On moonless nights, when the world lay draped in silence, faint whispers could be heard, echoes that didn't belong to memory, but to something older, darker, and far less forgiving. Emily, a graduate student researching folklore, had always dismissed graveyard tales as harmless superstition. Her friends often teased her fascination with things better left unspoken, but Emily was never one to shy away from what others feared. When she stumbled upon a half-buried ledger while cataloging local archives, her curiosity hardened into obsession. The book was bound in cracked leather, its pages brittle with age, and inside were records of unmarked burials that stretched back over a century. Many of the names were smudged, erased, or never written at all. But one phrase was repeated, etched in the margins like a warning: born in grave. The words sank into Emily's mind. What did it mean? A ritual? A mistake? A curse? Her rational mind craved explanation, but in the pit of her stomach, unease coiled tighter each night she read further. The town itself wasn't remarkable: small shops, winding alleys, and homes that leaned into one another like tired companions. Yet the graveyard on the outskirts stood apart, heavy with silence, as if time avoided it. Locals kept their distance. Even in daylight, the place seemed drenched in shadow, its iron gates rusted but firm, as though to keep something in rather than keep wanderers out. Emily wasn't alone in her curiosity. Her younger brother, Adam, recently returned from college, tagged along on her late-night research trips. Unlike Emily, Adam felt the chill, the way the air thickened the moment they crossed into the graveyard. "It's like walking underwater," he whispered once, his voice quivering, "like something doesn't want us here." Emily brushed it off, though she couldn't ignore the way her lantern flames sputtered every time they approached the oldest section of graves. There, tucked between crooked headstones and sunken earth, they discovered something unsettling: a patch of ground where grass refused to grow. The soil was freshly disturbed, though no burial had been recorded. And on one stone, nearly worn smooth by wind and rain, the carved words were faint but visible: "Here lies the unborn." That night, Emily dreamed of crying, high-pitched wails muffled by soil, echoing from beneath the ground. She awoke in a sweat, clutching the ledger as though it could protect her. Adam, pale and restless, admitted he'd heard the same sound, not in a dream, but while he stood at the window. "It was coming from the yard," he said, his voice trembling. For the first time, Emily felt her skepticism waver. The whispers she once chased as folklore now clung to her reality. The phrase "born in grave" no longer read like history. It pulsed like a warning. And as the siblings prepared to return to the graveyard to uncover more, a knock echoed against the door. Slow, hollow, from the other side of their empty home. The knock never came again. Emily and Adam waited in silence, their hearts racing, until the house settled into stillness. Neither dared open the door. When morning finally arrived, the world outside appeared unchanged, as though the night's terror had been a dream. Yet both knew something had shifted. Something now lingered between them and the graveyard. Emily had always been the determined one, her curiosity a shield against doubt. She told herself she was chasing folklore for her thesis, but deep down, the obsession ran deeper. Their father, who had vanished when Emily was 12, used to whisper strange bedtime stories about children who never belonged to the living, stories her mother dismissed as nonsense. Emily wondered now if his disappearance had more to do with the very phrase she kept reading in the ledger: "born in grave." Adam's fears were simpler, but no less haunting. He had always followed his sister's lead, though he never shared how the graveyard unsettled him in ways beyond reason. As a child, Adam had sleepwalked, often found standing at windows, murmuring words no one understood. He hadn't told Emily that, since returning home, the sleepwalking had begun again. The whispers he heard outside weren't only dreams. Sometimes, when he woke at night, dirt clung to his feet. Days grew heavy with unease. While Emily pored over the ledger, tracing the names of the forgotten, Adam kept catching movement at the edges of his vision. A figure, perhaps, tall and shadowed, vanishing whenever he turned his head. The house creaked with strange rhythm, the kind that felt deliberate, almost like footsteps moving above the ceiling. The dreams spread between them like contagion. Emily dreamed of soil pressing against her chest, of breathing through the earth and hearing muffled screams beneath her. Adam dreamed of children's hands, tiny, pale fingers clutching at his ankles, trying to drag him down into dark, unseen depths. Each morning they woke in silence, avoiding one another's eyes, both unwilling to admit the horrors chasing them from sleep into daylight. Small things shifted in their world. The family's old mirror warped their reflections, stretching their faces into grotesque versions for a split second before returning to normal. The air in their home grew colder, heavy with an odor of damp soil. At night, whispers swelled in the corners of rooms, weaving words neither of them fully understood. Emily tried to rationalize it. Stress, paranoia, the natural effects of immersing herself in disturbing research. But when Adam returned one evening, pale and shaken, clutching something in his hand, doubt gnawed at her. It was a tooth, small, brittle, clearly human, dug from the patch of barren earth near the graveyard's center. The siblings said nothing, but their silence spoke volumes. Fear had dug its claws into both of them, binding their thoughts to the graveyard and to whatever waited beneath the soil. That night, as the wind howled and shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, Emily heard the cry again, faint but undeniable. It came not from the graveyard this time, but from inside the house. The cries inside the house were enough to make Emily question everything. She kept her doubts quiet, but Adam noticed her jump at every creak, every whisper of wind through the cracks. To break the tension, Emily invited her closest friend Claire over for coffee one afternoon. Claire was practical to a fault, a skeptic who laughed at ghost stories and urban legends. Graveyard curses? Whispers in the night? Emily, you've buried yourself too deep in your thesis, Claire said with a smirk, brushing soil off her shoes as she entered. You're hearing things because you expect to hear them. But as they spoke, the kitchen door slammed shut so hard that the windows rattled. Claire froze. Adam swore he saw the handle twist on its own. Emily rushed to open it, but when she tugged, the door swung freely, as though it had never moved. Claire's smirk faltered, though she quickly muttered about drafts and old hinges. Still, her eyes lingered on the shadows pooling in the corners of the room. That evening, their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Wren, shuffled up the path with a basket of herbs. She was known for her odd warnings, but this time her voice trembled with genuine fear. You shouldn't stay in that house, she whispered. It was built on ground that was never meant to be touched. Children buried before breath was ever drawn. Some say the walls themselves were raised to keep them in. She pressed a sprig of rosemary into Emily's hand. For protection, she said, before hurrying away without another word. The house itself seemed to bristle at her warning. The temperature dropped. The faint sound of scratching began behind the walls, small, persistent, like fingernails against plaster. At first, Emily and Adam told themselves it was mice, but the sound grew louder, shifting locations as though following them from room to room. Objects began to move. A chair scraped back from the table as if an invisible guest had taken a seat. Adam's textbooks fell from their shelves in the middle of the night, pages fluttering open to passages about death rituals and burial customs. One morning, Emily found words scrawled across the steamed bathroom mirror, born in grave. Her hand shook as she wiped it clean, though Adam swore neither of them had been near the bathroom at the time. The siblings began to doubt each other. Adam accused Emily of pushing too hard, of feeding the hysteria. Emily accused Adam of hiding things from her, of letting his dreams, and his dirt-stained feet, become something more than coincidence. Their arguments left the air thick with resentment, and in that silence the whispers grew louder. Late one night, unable to sleep, Emily wandered into the basement. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of soil. Her lantern illuminated something carved into the foundation stones, names, dozens of them, etched with trembling hands. Most were scratched out, but one name repeated over and over until the stone cracked beneath it. It was her father's name. The basement discovery gnawed at Emily's mind. Her father's name, carved into the foundation stones, repeated like a desperate prayer, blurred the lines between research and nightmare. She tried to convince herself that some deranged vagrant had done it, but the handwriting, the jagged strokes, the frantic repetition, looked too much like the handwriting in the ledger. Adam, meanwhile, had grown pale and restless. His sleepwalking worsened. Twice Emily found him standing barefoot in the backyard at 3 in the morning, his eyes wide open yet unseeing, his lips whispering, "Born in grave." Each time she dragged him back inside, but he never remembered. The last time, there were scratches down his arms, raw and bleeding, as though something had clawed at him in the dark. The haunting no longer confined itself to whispers and shadows. It grew violent. Doors slammed shut inches from their faces. Windows cracked without reason. Footsteps pounded through the upstairs hall even when the two of them were standing together in the kitchen. Claire the skeptic refused to return after seeing a chair topple forward and slide across the floor as though shoved by invisible hands. "You need to get out," she warned Emily over the phone, her voice strained. "That house doesn't want you." But where would they go? The house was their childhood home, all they had left after their father disappeared and their mother's passing. Leaving felt like abandoning answers forever. Emily's obsession clashed with Adam's desperation to escape, widening the rift between them. He accused her of caring more about the mystery than his safety. She accused him of giving up, of running from truths buried in their family's past. The atmosphere thickened into suffocating dread. The house groaned at night as if breathing. Voices called to them from nowhere, sometimes a child's cry, sometimes their father's voice, pleading, weeping, demanding. The boundaries between dream and waking blurred. Emily found herself scratching words into her notebooks she didn't remember writing. Adam caught his own reflection smiling at him in the mirror when he wasn't. It all came to a breaking point one storm-heavy night. Lightning split the sky as the siblings argued by lantern light. The walls rattled with pounding footsteps. The air filled with the stench of damp earth. Then, a sound neither had heard before, a chorus of voices rising in unison, low and guttural, chanting the same phrase over and over. "Born in grave. Born in grave. Born in grave." The lantern blew out. In the darkness, Adam's voice trembled. "Emily, something's here." Her fingers searched for him, but instead brushed against something cold, slick, and impossibly small. When the lightning flashed through the windows, Emily looked down. She was holding a tiny hand, pale, childlike. And it gripped back. The light died. The hand didn't let go. The small pale hand slipped from Emily's grasp when the lantern flickered back to life, leaving her shaking and hollow. Adam swore he hadn't seen it, but his face betrayed the truth. He was terrified she had. Neither of them spoke of it aloud, but the silence only deepened their dread. The next day, Emily scoured the ledger again, tracing her father's name across the brittle pages. This time she noticed something she had overlooked. Faint notes in the margins, written in a hurried scrawl. They weren't records of burials. They were accounts of births. Children listed as stillborn, yet their names etched into stone as if they had lived. Over and over appeared the phrase, "born in grave." Her stomach turned as the pieces twisted together. These weren't graves dug after death. They were graves meant for the first breath. Adam entered the room, his voice raw. "I know why Dad left." His hand shook as he set a folded piece of paper on the table. A letter, yellowed and creased, discovered beneath a floorboard in his bedroom. The handwriting was unmistakable. Their father's. "The house is not ours. It belongs to them. They were buried before life began, bound to this soil. Your blood ties you to them. You were not born into the world. You were born in the grave." Emily felt her throat close. That's impossible. But as she said it, the words rang hollow. Memories surged, her mother's refusal to speak of her pregnancies, the way neighbors had always avoided them, the way children had whispered cruel things at school that she never understood. Adam's eyes glistened with terror. What if we're not who we think we are? The house groaned, as if answering. The mirror in the hallway cracked, splitting their reflections into jagged shards. In each shard, Emily swore she didn't look human. Her eyes hollow, her skin gray, her lips blue as if she had suffocated at birth. Claire called that night, her voice frantic. "I did some digging. That house. It's not just built on graves. It was a grave. The land was a burial site for infants, unblessed, unbaptized, left in the soil. And, Emily, Adam, your family name is in the records. Your line goes back to them. Emily dropped the phone. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. She wanted to deny it, scream that Claire was wrong, but the walls whispered the same truth. Born in grave, born in grave. Adam staggered back, clutching his head. It's inside us, he whispered. It's not haunting us. It is us. His voice cracked, turning guttural, almost inhuman. Emily stepped toward him, but his eyes had gone black, as if soil itself had filled them. Emily, he growled, though the voice wasn't entirely his. We can't escape what we are. The lights exploded, plunging the house into choking dark, and in that darkness, dozens of tiny hands began clawing at the floorboards beneath their feet. The house shook, as if alive. Dust fell from the ceiling, the floorboards groaned, and the scratching grew louder, more frantic, as if hundreds of hands clawed their way upward. Emily clutched Adam's arm, but his body shivered with unnatural tremors. His eyes, swallowed in blackness, stared at nothing. "Fight it!" Emily screamed, but her words were drowned by the chorus swelling through the halls. 100 voices, infant cries warped into shrieks, rose and fell, filling every corner of the house. The air thickened, reality warped. The walls dripped with soil, pictures bled into shadow, and the floor softened beneath their feet as if it were no longer wood, but freshly turned earth. Emily felt herself sinking. She dragged Adam toward the stairs, but the house resisted, each step heavy as though they carried graves on their backs. The ledger lay open on the table, its pages turning in the windless air. Words scrawled themselves across the brittle parchment in violent strokes. "You are ours." Emily's breath hitched. "It's not a haunting," she gasped. "It's a birthright." The truth burned through her. They weren't being chased by spirits. They were the spirits, tethered to this cursed ground. Children born into graves, their lives stolen, their bloodlines cursed to wander between the living and the dead. Her father hadn't left them. He had fled from what they were becoming. Adam collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. "I hear them inside me," he sobbed. His voice shifted mid-word, doubling into a chorus. "They want out, Emily." A shadow burst from his mouth like smoke, coiling into the air, forming the outline of a child's body before splintering into dozens more. Tiny hands reached for Emily, their touch freezing, suffocating, pressing against her throat. She swung wildly, screaming, but the hands only multiplied. The house roared, doors slammed, windows shattered inward, wind howled like a funeral dirge. In the storm of soil and whispers, Emily stumbled toward the ledger. She remembered her father's words. "The house belongs to them. Your blood ties you to them." Her trembling hands tore a page free. She cut her palm against the broken glass, smearing blood across the names carved into the paper. The voices faltered, hesitated. "Take me," she shouted, voice cracking. "Leave him. Take me instead." The house went silent. For a heartbeat, Emily thought it had worked. The hands released her, the shadows dissolved. Adam lifted his head, his eyes clearing. But then, slowly, he looked at her, not with gratitude, but with horror. Behind Emily, the wall bulged outward, cracking like a womb ready to split. From it emerged not children, not shadows, but a mirror image of herself. Skin gray, lips blue, eyes black as soil. It smiled with her mouth. "You can't trade one grave for another," it whispered in her voice. "You are already ours." The lantern died, and in the pitch dark, the sound of soil shoveling closed in around them. The shoveling stopped. Silence stretched, heavy and absolute. When Emily opened her eyes again, dawn light seeped through the shattered windows. The soil-stained walls were bare, the whispers gone. Adam lay unconscious beside her, his chest rising and falling in shallow human breaths. For the first time in nights, the house was still. Emily staggered to her feet, every muscle aching. She looked at her reflection in the broken glass scattered across the floor. No hollow eyes, no gray skin. Just herself, pale, trembling, but alive. Yet the memory of the thing that wore her face lingered, carved into her mind like the names etched into stone. Adam stirred, groaning. His eyes fluttered open, no longer black but bloodshot and weary. "Is it over?" he asked. His voice cracked like a child's. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Some part of her wanted to believe they had survived the night, that the curse had burned itself out. But the ledger, lying torn and blood-stained on the table, pulsed faintly as if alive. When she tried to close it, the book resisted, its pages trembling with an unseen breath. Claire arrived hours later, finding the siblings huddled in silence amid the wreckage. She refused to step inside, instead standing at the doorway, clutching her rosary like a weapon. "You need to leave," she said firmly. "The house isn't yours anymore. It never was." And so they left. The town's graveyard swallowed their footsteps as they crossed it one final time. Behind them, the house loomed quiet and patient, its windows reflecting the pale morning sun like watchful eyes. Life outside the town was not the same. Emily abandoned her thesis, her fascination with folklore now a wound too raw to touch. She told herself it was only a dream. Adam fared worse. He grew quieter with each passing week, his gaze distant, his hands trembling whenever children passed on the street. Sometimes Emily caught him standing at windows again, lips moving silently. Once, she found dirt beneath his fingernails, though he hadn't stepped outside all day. Neither spoke of what they saw in the house. Neither dared mention the truth, that they were part of the curse, bound to it by blood. To speak it aloud felt like inviting it back, but silence was no shield. Months later, Emily received a package with no return address. Inside was the ledger, its cracked leather cover sealed with fresh soil. A single page lay open, her name written over and over until the paper tore. She dropped it, heart pounding, and for a moment swore she heard the faintest sound, the scraping of tiny hands against wood, muffled cries beneath the floor. Some graves are never left behind,